Oh, you're still here. How loyal of you. Yes, I know. We've been away, gone, vanished, disappeared like a scandal quietly buried beneath a well-funded estate and a very cooperative newspaper editor. And for that, my dears, I offer my deepest, most sincere, and absolutely unnecessary apology. Truly, I'm devastated. I trust you suffered terribly, wandering your days without intrigue, without whispered betrayals, without the delicate unraveling of civilization as we know it. However did you cope? Tea, prayer, restraint? How dreadful. But do not fret. We are back now. And as it turns out, the world did not politely pause in our absence. No, it did something far more interesting. It began to break. While we were away, society did what it always does in the face of impending collapse. It adjusted its posture, poured another glass of wine, and insisted everything was perfectly under control. In London, committees were formed. In Paris, theories were published. In the Alps, well, in the Alps, they built a machine to silence a mountain. Yes, a machine to silence a mountain. And you thought your ex was ambitious. Now, before you clutch your pearls too tightly, understand this. Alps de Pierre has always been, how shall I say, overly fond of control. I once attended a seasonal gathering there. Beautiful gowns, rigid smiles, and not a single note of music played without approval from someone with a ledger and a title. They don't like unpredictability, you see. They don't like storms. They don't like anything that refuses to behave. And so, naturally, they decided to correct the world. Enter our dear Maestro Valerius. Oh yes, I know him. Or at least I know his type. Brilliant. Cold. The sort of man who hears a symphony and immediately begins calculating how to improve it by removing the inconvenient parts. People like him are always welcomed at first, celebrated even. Because he promises something irresistible. No chaos, no risk, no pain, just order, just silence, just obedience. And society, bless its fragile little ego, loves obedience, especially when it believes it is still in control. Meanwhile, in Hawksmere, where things are far less artificial, our dear Aemon is quite literally waking up in pieces, crystalline veins, bleeding dreams, the land itself whispering that something is terribly, irreversibly wrong. And here is the part that should concern you if you are paying attention. And I do hope you are. This is not a distant problem. No, my loves. This is the kind of problem that travels quietly, efficiently, like gossip in a drawing room, except instead of reputations, it consumes entire ecosystems. And just when things could not possibly become more inconvenient, a woman collapses at the gates, a messenger, a fugitive, a warning wrapped in frost and desperation, and suddenly the polite fiction of safety shatters, because nothing ruins a carefully curated illusion faster than the truth arriving uninvited. So, welcome back. You've returned just in time. Let's see how long the world survives its own need to control it.
Chapter 7. Gears in the Shadow. The Silent City. Hull had not changed. It had congealed. Alianor remembered it from her girlhood visits, a bustling, raucous, filthy port where the shouts of stevedores competed with the cries of gulls, and the reek of fish, tar, and distant spices created a pungent symphony of commerce. The city she entered now, disguised in the sturdy woolens and wimple of a merchant's widow named Martha Hill, moved to a different rhythm. The cacophony was still there, but it was overlaid, disciplined, by a deeper, more insistent beat. The thrum, thrum, thrum of hydraulic engines pumping at the new docks, the synchronized clang of clockwork cranes, the sharp whistles of syndicate foremen marking shift changes. Order had been imposed with brutal efficiency. The streets were cleaner, the flow of carts regimented into designated lanes. Public notice boards, once plastered with bawdy playbills and royal proclamations, now bore crisp, identical posters detailing work schedules, civic ordinances, and the benefits of syndicate-sponsored savings plans. The air still stank, but now it was laced with the acrid ozone tang of alchemical forges and the sweet, cloying scent of the coal gas lamps that lit the broader avenues, banishing shadows deemed unproductive. This was the world the Carthage Syndicate had built in the vacuum of its own collapse. Not a broken empire, but a disseminated doctrine. The central board was gone, Lady Constance in prison, but the methodology had metastasized. Efficiency was the new god, and its temples were the fortified trading houses, now flying the flags of various progressive mercantile leagues. Alianor's goal was one such house, the Acheron Exchange. It was not the largest, but according to the Factor's meticulously memorized briefing, it was the most aggressive in acquiring esoteric assets and legacy intellectual properties, a euphemism for scavenging the ruins of the old syndicate's most dangerous projects. If anyone in Hull had deeper knowledge of the Stilling engine, or of Maestro Valerius, it would be in their vaults. Her contact was a man known as Pendleton. The Factor had described him as a rat who survived the sinking of the ship by learning to breathe water. He traded loyalty for ledgers. A former mid-level archivist for the Syndicate, he had sold information to rival concerns during the collapse, carving out a precarious niche as a broker of secrets. He was, in the Factor's estimation, venal, terrified, and therefore predictable. Finding him was the first test. He no longer frequented the dockside taverns where loose talk flowed. The new Hull frowned upon unproductive loitering. Instead, the Factor's directions led her to a place called the Calibrated Cup, a coffee house nestled between a lens grinder's workshop and a shop selling standardized brass fittings. The interior was a parody of Syndicate aesthetics. Everything was measured and matched. The tables were set at precise intervals. The waitstaff wore identical gray aprons and moved with unnerving economy. Patrons, clerks, junior factors, engineers with brass rule cases, sipped bitter coffee and spoke in low, purposeful tones about throughput, tolerances, and logistical friction. The air buzzed with subdued ambition. Alianor, as Martha Hill, took a small table in a corner, her back to the wall. She ordered tea, paying with the unfamiliar, milled-edge syndicate coinage. She waited, feeling the weight of 100 gazes that saw only another widow, perhaps seeking a loan or selling a deceased husband's trade contacts. He arrived exactly on the hour, as promised. Pendleton was a slight man with the perpetual stoop of one who has spent a lifetime bowing to superiors and hunched over documents. His clothes were of good quality but threadbare at the cuffs, carefully maintained to suggest faded gentility rather than poverty. His eyes, behind wire-framed spectacles, darted around the room like startled mice. He sat without greeting, placing a leather folio on the table between them. Mistress Hill, you inquired about historical tariff schedules for Baltic timber, a curious specialty for a widow. His voice was a reedy whisper. My late husband's business was full of curiosities, Alianor replied, keeping her voice meek, her eyes downcast. He believed in understanding precedent. Precedent. Pendleton sniffed, adjusting his glasses. A fluid concept nowadays. What was standard practice for Carthage is now contested history. Some precedents are more saleable than others. He tapped the folio. The schedules you asked for are here, along with some appended commentaries regarding certain non-standard shipments, specialty metals, crated machinery of unknown function, to unusual destinations. Alianor's heart beat a steady rhythm against her ribs. This was the dance. Unusual destinations interest me. My husband had diversified interests toward the end. The Alps, for instance. Pendleton's darting eyes froze for a second, locking on hers. The fear in them was palpable. He licked thin lips. The mountain routes, risky, subject to novel trade agreements. The commentaries on those are extensive and expensive. I am prepared to pay for clarity, Alianor said, sliding a small, heavy purse across the table. It contained no coin, but several rough, uncut gemstones, untraceable, High value. Pendleton's hand covered the purse, making it vanish into his voluminous sleeve. He leaned forward, his whisper dropping even lower. The Acheron Exchange. They have a sub-basement, a special acquisitions archive. It's where they keep the things too dangerous or too embarrassing for the main ledger. Blueprints from Fry's private lab, personnel files on terminated specialists, shipping manifests for Project Ethelred. Project Ethelred? Their internal code for the Alpine venture, the Stilling engine. He breathed the name like a blasphemy. Acheron didn't start it, but they bought the brains behind it when Carthage fell. They financed the second phase. They think they control Valerius. A bitter, knowing smile touched his lips. They are wrong, but the records are there, proving their involvement, detailing the harmonic theft. And how does one access this sub-basement? Pendleton sat back, his fear now warring with a sly cunning. You don't, not without an Acheron Factor's sigil key and a passcode changed weekly. The guards are not men. They are automata, clockwork sentinels. They respond only to authorized resonance patterns emitted by the keys. Automata. The word sent a chill through her. Stories of such things existed, crude, wind-up novelties for the rich. But for security, it spoke of a technological leap born of Fry's and Valerius's unholy science. There is always a flaw, Alianor stated, her merchant widow persona hardening into something sharper. Pendleton nodded slowly. The flaw is human. The chief archivist, a man named Sutter, he has the master key. He is also a creature of habit, pride, and a certain private vice. He dines every Thursday night at the Golden Mean, a club for senior factors. He returns to the exchange after a loan to review the day's acquisitions. His route takes him through the old tannery district. It is poorly lit, and his vice makes him vulnerable. What vice? He collects, Pendleton whispered, living butterflies. Exotic species. He has a private conservatory. He pays exorbitantly for new specimens, no questions asked. A crate marked agricultural samples from a tropical clime arrived on the Kestrel yesterday. It is being held at the customs shed, awaiting his personal inspection tomorrow before being moved to his townhouse. Alianor understood. Sutter's obsession was the crack in the armor. A crate could be intercepted, altered. A man could be ambushed on a dark street, his precious key borrowed. It was crude, dangerous work, the kind of work Len would have reveled in. Len was 1,000 miles away, guarding Eamon's back on a road to the Alps. She was alone in a city of gears, and she had to become a wrench. You will provide me, she said, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. With the customs shed location, the Kestrel's docking slip, Sutter's precise route and schedule, and a detailed drawing of his sigil key. Pendleton paled, the reality of what he was enabling crashing down on him. He nodded, a quick, jerky motion. It will be in the folio, the commentaries. Burn it after. He stood abruptly, his part done. As he turned to leave, he paused, looking at her with something akin to pity. You seek to stop the engine. I hear things. Whispers on the harmonic telegraph. It's already learning, adapting. It's not just stilling the Alpine song. It's starting to compose, using the stolen notes. Valerius isn't building a prison. He's building a conductor. And he's looking for his first soloist. Then he was gone, swallowed by the gray stream of patrons. Alianor sat, the lukewarm tea forgotten before her. The weight of the folio was immense. He's building a conductor. The words fused with the memory of Aemon, his body slowly becoming an instrument of the land. A soloist. She had come for proof, for leverage. She might have just found the blueprint for a far more terrifying war, the Discordant Grove. While Alianor navigated the geometric hell of Hull, a different, more subtle corruption was unfolding in the Warden Dominion. The single tympanum resonator, sunk into the northwest ridge under the compromise with Master Gilda a lifetime ago, had been a forgotten footnote. A syndicate device, long inert after the fall, absorbed into the landscape like a swallowed piece of grit. Aemon had assumed the land had neutralized it, encysted it in layers of benign rock and root. He was wrong. Tom felt it first as a managerial problem. A hunting party returned from the northwest reaches empty-handed. No game, Steward Tom, their leader reported, troubled. Not a squirrel, not a bird. It's not that they're hiding. They're gone. And the stillness. It hurts your ears. Then a forager, a woman who knew every edible fern and mushroom, came to Bess in a panic. Her hands were covered in a weeping rash. The fool's parsley, it grew giant, but touching it burns. The chanterelles by the old stump, they've turned clear, like glass. They ring when you tap them. Finally, a shepherd boy fled to the keep, sobbing. 3 of his ewes had wandered into a dip near the ridge. They had stopped, confused, then begun walking in perfect, endless circles, bleating softly, until they dropped from exhaustion. When he tried to pull them out, the air itself felt thick and sticky, and a soundless pressure built in his head until his nose bled. Tom brought the reports to Aemon in the singing grove. Aemon listened, his face growing graver with each account. He had been feeling a growing unease, a localized numbness in the web of his senses. He had attributed it to the vast, draining pull of the distant engine. Now he understood part of it was homegrown. "Take me there," he said. They went at noon, though the light in that part of the wood was thin, washed out, as if filtered through old glass. The forest here was not dead. It was wrong. The leaves were too green, too shiny, like painted tin. They did not rustle in the breeze. They clicked. The moss underfoot was springy but gave no sense of life, more like wool stuffing. The epicenter was a small, rocky depression. At its center lay the resonator site, a barely visible low mound of earth that looked fused, vitrified. The air hummed, not with the warden's deep music, but with a high, piercing harmonic that set the teeth on edge. It was the sound of silence being enforced. And in a perfect circle around the mound, approximately 30 yards in radius, was the proof. Ferns grew in precise geometric spirals. Mushrooms had crystallized into tiny faceted towers. A fox lay dead at the edge, its body perfectly preserved, unrotted, but its eyes were missing. In their sockets were tiny, polished spheres of quartz. Most chilling were the trees. Their bark had developed intricate fractal patterns that looked like circuit diagrams or alchemical seals. Their branches grew in straight lines, making right-angle turns. One sapling had grown into a perfect hollow cube of woven twigs. It was life, but life rewritten by a cold mathematical logic. A logic that hated song, hated wildness, hated the messy, glorious chaos of nature. "God's wounds," Tom whispered, crossing himself. The old gesture seemed absurd here, in the face of this profane order. Aemon stepped to the edge of the affected zone. He raised a hand, feeling the resonant field. It was a wall of vibrating negation. It didn't attack. It defined. It stated, "Here, things will be thus." He could feel the warden's influence, the land's natural song, pushing against this bubble of unnatural law, trying to heal it. But the bubble was persistent, its frequency drilled deep into the bedrock, self-sustaining. "It's a seed," Aemon said, his voice tight with rage and horror. A seed of the stilling engine. Fry's machines weren't just listening, they were imprinting. This one was dormant, but the signal from the Alps, it's acting like a trigger, waking it up, teaching it. He stepped into the zone. The effect was immediate and violent. The high harmonic focused on him, a psychic scalpel trying to dissect his connection to the land. The green veins in his skin flared in defense, but they also itched, a maddening internal vibration that made him want to claw his own flesh. His head felt packed with wool, then with needles. The world lost its color, fading to shades of gray blueprint. He pushed forward, towards the vitrified mound. Each step was a battle against a universe insisting he walk in straight lines, breathe at a metronomic pace, feel nothing but calm efficiency. He reached the mound and placed his burning hands upon it. Visions not of life, but of process. Gears turning in a vacuum, pendulums swinging in perfect, endless sync. A crystal growing in a solution, its form dictated solely by the chemical equation. The beautiful, terrible piece of absolute predictability. And beneath it, faint but desperate, the muffled scream of the earth here, the local spirit of this patch of forest, trapped, silenced, being slowly rewritten into a component. Aemon opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His song was stifled. He pushed with his will, not to sing, but to remember. He poured memory into the ground, the taste of wild berries, the unpredictability of a summer storm, the unique, gnarled shape of an ancient oak that grew as it pleased, the joyous, cacophonous dawn chorus of birds. For a moment, the gray precision wavered. A spot of lichen on the mound regained its natural, asymmetrical orange. A single, normally shaped leaf unfurled from a geometric branch. Then the defensive harmonic spiked, a feedback shriek of pure no. A force like a giant's palm slammed into Aemon's chest, throwing him backwards out of the circle. He landed hard on the natural moss, gasping, the vivid green and brown of the true world, a shocking relief. Tom rushed to his side. Aemon! Aemon sat up, wiping a trickle of blood from his ear. His body had tried to resonate with a frequency it could not tolerate. It's too entrenched, he coughed, and it's linked. It draws strength from the Alpine signal. To cleanse this, we'd have to sever that link. Which means destroying the engine, Tom concluded, his face ashen. He looked at the geometric grove, a cancer of order in their living world. And until then? We quarantine it, Aemon said, rising unsteadily. Mark this whole area. No one enters, no animals. It may spread, or it may incubate. He looked at Tom, his eyes haunted. Tell the people it's a blight, a strange rot, which it is, just not one they'll understand. As they turned to leave, Aemon cast one last look at the silent, orderly grove. It was a tiny patch, but it was a preview. This was what Valerius wanted for the world. A place where every fox died with quartz eyes, every tree grew by blueprint, and every song was replaced by the hum of a perfectly tuned machine. The warden's distress was a deep, sorrowful pulse in the ground. It wasn't just under attack from afar. The enemy's ideology had taken root in its very flesh. The intercepted crate. Back in Hull, under a cloak of drizzling, soot-laden rain, Alianor put Pendleton's information to work. The customs shed was a grim brick warehouse by the midnight quiet docks. The watchman was easily distracted by a staged argument between two drunken sailors, a pair of street urchins paid with a few pennies, at the far end of the wharf. Slipping inside was a matter of a picked lock and silent footsteps. The interior was a canyon of stacked crates and barrels, smelling of damp wood, hemp, and foreign dust. She found the Kestrel's consignment by its bill of lading, pinned to a slatted box marked AGR, SAMP, /for Sutter, /fragile, /live specimens. The crate was not large. Using a small pry bar, she carefully worked loose the lid's nails, her ears straining for any sound from the watchman returning. The lid came up. Inside, packed in soft, fragrant wood shavings, were a dozen small, ventilated wooden boxes. Within each, clinging to delicate branches, were butterflies of breathtaking beauty, iridescent blue morphos, scarlet swallowtails with wings like stained glass, huge, owl-eyed creatures of velvet brown. They were stunning, and they were her key. She worked quickly, her movements precise. From her pack, she withdrew a small vial of clear, viscous liquid, a sedative compound Bess had prepared from Dominion herbs, strong enough to induce a deep, harmless torpor in small creatures. Using a dropper, she administered a minuscule dose to each butterfly, careful not to damage their wings. Within moments, their delicate antennae drooped, their movement ceased. They would sleep for a day, perhaps two. Next, she removed from her pack a false bottom for the crate, a thin, expertly crafted panel. Beneath it, she placed the tools of her new trade, a set of lockpicks, a thin, powerful garrote of braided silk, a sap, a vial of corrosive acid in a lead container, and a small, loaded one-shot pistol. The weapons felt alien, blasphemous in her hands, the tools of the factor's world, not a lady's solar. She covered them with the shavings, replaced the butterfly boxes, and nailed the lid shut, leaving no visible mark of tampering. She was out of the shed and melting into the shadows as the watchman's grumbling footsteps returned. The crate would be delivered to Sutter's townhouse in the morning. He would open it, find his precious specimens inexplicably dormant. In his disappointment and confusion, he would be less careful. He would go to his club that night seeking distraction, and on his walk home, Martha Hill would be waiting. As she returned to her rented room in a respectable, quiet boarding house, Alianor felt a profound dislocation. She had just drugged innocent creatures and prepared to assault a man. She was swimming in a moral sewer for a glimpse at a ledger. This was the cost of the gambit when played on the enemy's board. You got your hands dirty. You became something else. She washed her hands in the basin, scrubbing until the skin was red, but the feeling remained. She was no longer just Alianor de Clairvaux, Lady of Hawksmere. She was a thief, a potential assailant, a spy. To save the song, she had to move in silence. To protect the wild, she had to become a predator in the city's concrete jungle. Looking out her small window at the gaslit street below, where the clockwork city marched on in its efficient, heartless rhythm, she thought of Aemon in his silent grove, of the geometric trees. They were both fighting corruptions of the natural order. His was a blight of silent logic. Hers was a descent into calculated brutality. Two fronts of the same war, and the distance between them had never felt greater.
And there it is. The moment no one in polite society will admit they've been waiting for. The mask slips, and suddenly everyone is scrambling to decide whether to fix it or pretend it was never there at all. Now let me tell you what is actually happening while our dear protagonists navigate their respective little nightmares. In Hull, efficiency has become religion. Not faith, mind you. Faith requires belief. This is something far more dangerous. This is certainty, clean streets, regulated movement, measured ambition, a city that no longer breathes freely but ticks. Tick, tick, tick. Like a clock that forgot it was supposed to serve time, not become it. Oh, the merchants adore it. The leagues praise it. The investors are positively breathless over the predictability of it all. Imagine a world where everything performs exactly as expected. No delays, no surprises, no humanity. And right at the center of this gleaming, grinding perfection sits something far more interesting than any ledger or trade route. Fear. Because beneath all that order, beneath every neatly printed notice and synchronized footstep, is the quiet understanding that this is not stability. This is control enforced by something that does not negotiate. And in Hawksmere, oh, Hawksmere. While Alianor is busy becoming something sharper, something more dangerous than she ever intended, our dear Aemon is discovering that the infection is not just coming. It's already here, a seed planted, a frequency awakened, a piece of the world rewritten into something obedient. And let us be very clear about what we just witnessed. This is not destruction. Destruction is loud, chaotic, emotional. This is replacement. Life, but corrected. Nature, but improved. Reality, but standardized. It is, quite frankly, the most terrifying kind of horror, because it does not look like horror at all. It looks like progress. And now, as if things were not already delightfully complicated, we have a little revelation whispered through shadow and ledger. The maestro is not simply silencing the world. No, he is composing it, which means, and do try to keep up, my loves, he will eventually require something far more valuable than machinery. He will require a voice, a perfect voice, a soloist. Now, who do we know who is becoming less man and more instrument by the day? Yes, exactly. Suddenly, this is no longer just a war of ideas or inventions. It's a hunt, and the most exquisite part. Neither side is entirely wrong. One believes the world must be controlled to survive. The other believes it must remain wild to live. And in the middle, are the people forced to become things they never intended. A sovereign turned thief, a steward turned liar, a man turned song, and oh, how society will judge them. Later, of course, once it's safe, once someone else has paid the price, because that is what society does best. It waits, it watches, and then it rewrites the story to make itself look wise. But you and I, we know better. We are watching it unfold in real time. Messy, dangerous, unforgivable, delicious. So no, I will not apologize again for our absence. Because clearly the world has been busy preparing something far more entertaining in the meantime. And now that we're back, I suggest you pay very close attention. Because the next move will not be subtle. And when the music finally changes, you may not recognize the world that's left standing.